The Christmas gift. The grand ballroom of the Harrison Hotel sparkled with 1,000 tiny lights. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls, casting warm shadows across the polished marble floor. In the center of the room stood a magnificent Christmas tree, decorated with golden ornaments and white roses that seemed to glow in the soft light. Sarah Mitchell stood near the entrance, holding her daughter Emma's hand. The little girl wore a pink dress and clutched a small stuffed rabbit against her chest. Her blonde hair was tied back with a careful ribbon, and her shoes were polished to a shine. But Emma wasn't looking at the beautiful decorations or the elegantly dressed guests. She was staring at the floor, counting the tiles beneath her feet. 1, 2, 3, 4, Emma whispered, her voice barely audible over the classical music that filled the room. Sarah squeezed her daughter's hand gently. We're here for Aunt Rebecca's party, sweetheart. Remember? We talked about this. Emma nodded but didn't look up. She was 5 years old, with autism that made the world feel too loud, too bright, too much. Sarah had prepared her for weeks, showing her pictures of the hotel, explaining who would be there, practicing what they might do. But no amount of preparation could truly ready Emma for a room full of strangers and unfamiliar sounds. The party was a corporate holiday event hosted by Rebecca's company. Sarah's sister had begged her to come, promising it would be quiet and elegant. Just sophisticated adults, Rebecca had said. Nothing overwhelming. But Rebecca didn't understand. She tried, she really did, but she couldn't feel what Emma felt when too many voices mixed together, or when music swelled too loud, or when unexpected sounds crashed through the careful walls Emma built to protect herself. Across the room, standing among a group of men in dark suits, was James Harrison. He owned the hotel, and more than that. At 32, he'd built an empire of luxury properties across 3 states. People called him cold. They said he never smiled, never showed emotion, never let anyone get close. His employees respected him but feared him. His competitors avoided him. James stood with his hands in his pockets, only half listening to the conversation around him. He'd attended 100 parties like this one. They all blurred together into one endless stream of small talk and false laughter. Then he noticed the little girl by the door. She was covering her ears with her hands, her face scrunched up in distress. Her mother knelt beside her, speaking softly, but the child was clearly struggling. Other guests had started to notice too, glancing over with curiosity or concern. James excused himself from his group without explanation and walked toward the band. They were playing a lively holiday medley, filling the room with cheerful sound. To most people, it was festive and perfect. But James was watching Emma, and he understood. Lower the volume, he told the conductor quietly. Cut it by half. The conductor blinked in surprise. Sir, the guests. Now, please. The music immediately softened, becoming a gentle background melody instead of a commanding presence. The change was dramatic. Several guests looked around in confusion, wondering what had happened. Emma slowly lowered her hands from her ears. She looked up at her mother with wide, uncertain eyes. It's better now, Sarah said, relief flooding through her voice. See. It's much better. Emma nodded and took a deep breath. Her shoulders, which had been hunched up near her ears, gradually relaxed. Sarah glanced around, trying to understand what had caused the sudden change. Her eyes landed on the tall man in the gray suit standing near the band, watching them. His expression was difficult to read, but there was something gentle in the way he observed Emma, something that didn't match his reputation. James caught Sarah's gaze and gave a small nod before turning away. He wasn't looking for gratitude or recognition. He'd simply seen a problem and solved it. But the evening wasn't over. As the party continued with its softer music, Emma began to explore. She stayed close to her mother but ventured a few steps away, looking at the Christmas tree with growing interest. The ornaments fascinated her. They were perfectly round, perfectly spaced, creating patterns she could trace with her eyes. Sarah watched her daughter with a mixture of hope and anxiety. These moments were precious. When Emma felt safe enough to be curious, to engage with the world on her own terms. Would she like to get closer? Sarah jumped slightly at the voice. James Harrison stood beside her, his hands still in his pockets, his expression calm. I'm sorry. Sarah said. The tree. Would your daughter like to get closer to it? James kept his voice low and even, the same tone Sarah used with Emma when the world got too loud. Yes, I think she would. But I don't want to disturb the party. You're not disturbing anything. James looked at Emma, who had taken another small step toward the tree but seemed uncertain about going further. I have a granddaughter about her age. Autism spectrum. My daughter told me about sensory sensitivities and how parties can be overwhelming. Sarah felt her throat tighten with emotion. She met so many people who didn't understand, who thought Emma was just shy or misbehaving. Hearing this man, this stranger, use the right words with such quiet understanding nearly brought tears to her eyes. Emma, Sarah called softly. Would you like to see the ornaments up close? Emma turned and nodded eagerly. James walked toward the tree, and Sarah followed with Emma. The other guests gave them space, sensing something important was happening even if they didn't understand what. When they reached the tree, James knelt down so he was at Emma's level. He didn't try to touch her or force eye contact. He simply pointed at one of the golden ornaments near the bottom. This one has a pattern, he said quietly. See how the lines go in circles? Emma leaned forward, studying it. Circles, she repeated. Would you like to hold it? Emma looked at her mother, seeking permission. Sarah nodded, and Emma carefully took the ornament James removed from the tree. She turned it slowly in her hands, watching how the light reflected off its surface. It's pretty, Emma whispered. It is, James agreed. You know what? I think it would look even prettier on your Christmas tree at home. Would you like to take it with you? Emma's eyes widened. She looked at the ornament, then at James, then at her mother. Mr. Harrison, we couldn't, Sarah began. James, please. And you can. Consider it a gift. He stood up and finally looked directly at Sarah. His eyes, which the business world called cold and calculating, were warm. Thank you for coming tonight. And thank you for trusting this space with your daughter. Sarah realized then that he understood more than she'd thought. He knew what it took for Emma to be here, what courage it required, what exhaustion would follow. Thank you, Sarah said, meaning so much more than the words could express. For the music. For this. For seeing her. James nodded. Everyone deserves to be seen. As Sarah and Emma prepared to leave a little while later, Emma carefully carrying her golden ornament wrapped in soft tissue paper, the party continued around them. The music stayed low and gentle. Other parents with young children had begun to arrive, noticing the welcoming atmosphere. James Harrison watched them go from across the room. He didn't smile, that wasn't his way, but something in his expression had softened. In a life full of business deals and profit margins, of cold calculations and strategic decisions, there were moments that mattered more. Moments when seeing one child relax, one mother's shoulders ease, one small gesture of understanding could change an entire evening. Emma looked back once before leaving, catching James's eye. She waved her small hand, still holding her rabbit. He waved back. And in that quiet exchange, in that simple moment of connection, the cold CEO was revealed to be something else entirely, simply human, simply kind, simply paying forward the understanding his own family had needed. The Christmas tree continued to shine, one ornament missing from its lower branches, now traveling home to bring light to a different place, to remind a little girl that the world, sometimes, could be gentle after all.